Okay, so let's talk about the jQuery event methods. So an event represents just the moment when something happens on your web page. So it mostly describes when your user is interacting with your web page. For example, let's say if you have a single button on your web page, and when the user clicks that button or interacts with that button, you want, let's say, some information to be sent to your database or your server. So what jQuery says is that once that user interacts with that button, an event handler is called, which is just a function you can define, and you can write some code letting you know that the user has interacted with that button. So again, event methods attach a function to an event handler for the selected elements on your web page. So some of the event methods are click, double click, focus, mouse enter, and mouse leave. There's tons of more, but I'm just going over the basics. So as again, if you just click an element on your web page, you can fire a function and make it do something as well. And of course, with the double click, if you double click on that element, you can call a function. And if that HTML element on your page gains focus, you can make it do a function as well. And the same thing for mouse enter and mouse leave. And mouse enter and mouse leave are kind of like hovering effects. So when you hover over an element, they're just calling it mouse enter. When you drag your cursor over the element, you can make it call a function. And for the mouse leave is just when you're leaving that specific element. So let's do some examples where I can show you these in a live demonstration. So I'll pull up my template and I'll just modify some code. So once our jQuery library has loaded successfully, I want it to do some things. So I'll go down to my body tags first, and I'll just set up some output display tags. So I'll give it a div element, and I'll type the ID. And the ID, let's call it div1. Div underscore 1. And under that, I want to declare a paragraph tag for my output. And I actually like and prefer the paragraph tags to display the output because it adds an additional return character for some space, just for easier readability for me. So I'll assign it the ID of output. So that's it for my body tag. So I'll go back up to my script tags, and inside the ready function, I want to, let's say, set up the set up the events. So I'll do some jQuery syntax. And I want to use the jQuery selector ID. So I'll do the div underscore ID. And what I want it to do, let's say, well, you know what? Let me put some content inside my div tag. This is the first div. Okay. So if I go back here, let's try the click function. So if I change the ID, nope, I'll keep the ID. Sorry about that. And if I perform the action, click, which is a jQuery function, and inside the parentheses, I want to call an anonymous function. So once I click on the element with the ID div underscore click, I want to perform some code when that happens. So let's say inside my paragraph ID, I want to use the output ID. So I want to display some information inside the paragraph element, and I'm referencing it by the output name of the ID. And I want to use the HTML function from the jQuery library. And all this does is that when the HTML function is called within the jQuery library, it just modifies the content, the HTML content. So I want to add or apply some HTML content to the paragraph tag. And what I'll put is that the div has been clicked. Okay. And me, I'm a big copy and paster, so I'll copy and paste this jQuery syntax. I'll paste it and just modify the bits and codes. So I'll do the double click function. So I'll go back here and I'll just name and call the jQuery function dbl click. And we can modify the output from the HTML function. The div has been double clicked. Okay, and I'll just copy and paste that jQuery syntax again. And for our last jQuery function, let's put mouse enter. I'll come back to the focus method or function. So we're going to use the mouse enter. So let's put mouse enter function. So we're going to put for the HTML content, you are now inside the div element / tag, vice versa. I'll just copy and paste that and put mouse leave. And again, I'm just changing the function names. And I'm just modifying the HTML content that's referencing the paragraph tag with the ID name of output here. So for the mouse leave, you are now leaving the div element / tag. Let's go back here and let's do the focus. So I'm going to create a new input tag or new input element as a text box. So I'll do type equals text, and I'll give it the ID name my underscore text box. And I'll just copy that ID. And what I'll do here now is that, let me see here, I'll just copy and paste another jQuery function and syntax and use the ID my underscore text box here, and I'll call the focus function. And pretty much once my text box gains focus, it'll let me know that something happened. So again, in my HTML content, I'll put my text box or your text box has now gained focus. Okay. So let's put these to the test and see if it works. So I'll load up my browser and I'll refresh it. So as we can see, I have my div element. This is the first div. So when I hover over it, as you can see, the HTML content changes inside the paragraph tags, you are now inside the div element. And if I exit from the div element, it says you are now leaving the div element tag. So if we go down to my input box or our text box element and we actually click inside of it, we now have focus. So it lets us know your text box has now gained focus. So again, we're just attaching functions to our events that's called by our web page that interacts with our jQuery library. Extremely simple and easy. And I'll actually do some old-fashioned JavaScript code to let you guys know if you want to use the long way or the jQuery extremely short way. So let me just minimize my browser. So if we were to do the old-fashioned JavaScript, we would do something, for example, let's comment this out, comment this out, and comment this out. So for example, I'll just give you a quick snippet. So in order to select an HTML element on the web page by ID, the old-fashioned way to reference it in an object is to do something like this: var my object equals document dot get element by ID, and inside the parentheses we want to just type the reference name, which is output, and it doesn't use a hash because it's the old-fashioned JavaScript. And that's how you would reference an HTML element using the old school JavaScript. So what's a whole lot more easier? Either doing this or doing something like this. So again, using the jQuery style, I'll just type var my jQuery object equals $ parentheses double quotation marks hash output, and that's it. And that's how I will reference an HTML element using jQuery. So as we can see, it's a lot more simpler and it's a lot more easier. So again, let me just delete this, and uncomment my code. So as we can see, everything has worked, and there's a lot more event handlers, but just for this course, we're just going over the basics, and in the future, I'll give you guys links to explore more from different sites to look at the event methods that's connected to the event handlers as well. And maybe in the future, if you guys would like, I will create an intermediate course as well if you guys want to progress on using jQuery.